Welcome back to Chapter 7, Part 2. Are the difference of rate also difference of biology? Most Americans assume that race is natural and inevitable aspect of human society. Race can be defined as a system that organizes people into hierarchical groups based on specific physical traits that are thought to reflect fundamental and innate differences rooted in genetic and biological differences. Markers such as skin color upon which racial distinctions are made are arbitrary. So, our adaptations. There are four major adaptations. We have race, which talks about our genetic um, ability for melanin production, lung capacity, such as that in high altitudes, and Tibetan people are really honestly a great example of this because they live up in an area where the most humans that go to visit end up needing oxygen, like portable oxygen. And their lung capacity has allowed them to live very comfortably in that area. Heat and cold, an adaptational example of this is Inuit people have some of the best blood flow to hands and feet in order to keep warm and protect from frostbite. Aboriginals of Australia are another example. They sleep close to the fire, and when the skin cools away from the fire, most would be uncomfortable. They, however, are not, which is an adaptation. Also, our nasal structure, how wide it is, how much we need to breathe in because of moisture or a lack of oxygen or some other such. It all helps us to be able to adapt to our environment. Two concepts of race. The scientific concept of race is a population or group of populations within a species that has measurable defining biological characteristics and low statistical measures of similarity, aka subspecies. And as we said earlier, there's not that much in the way of statistical measurable differences between the humans that are alive today. We look at the second, and this is where anthropologists kind of believe and where our set of rationale comes in. The culturally constructed concept of race. This is a set of cultural or ethnic factors combined with easily perceived morphological traits, skin reflection, body shape, cranial structures, into artificial biologicized categories. Naturalizing race. It wasn't until the 18th century that scientists sought to naturalize human differences. And they came up with four general approaches to categorizing human races: trait-based approaches, geographical origin approaches, adaptational approach, and population-based approach. There are problems with all of those approaches, though. None describe an actual individual, and none characterize whole groups of people. What seems like obvious racial differences come from special ways of sampling people. Isolates one or more arbitrary visual trait and marks that trait as representative of a group. But how many people do you know that are classified under a race that have such a wide variety of different tones and complexities and complexions, the traits that can come to represent of other characteristics, which really sucks. But these are intelligence, aptitude, and character that tend to be attributed to the different racial groups. Categories themselves are not stable, and as interbreeding occurs, these categories tend to get even more fuzzy. So, human variation is clinical and traits vary independently. Independent variations there is no connection between skin pigmentation and any other supposed racial trait, such as certain facial features, cranium size, or body shape. Biological traits and genetic features never vary in easily defined ways. They don't correspond to racial categories of Americans recognize. Historical movement, intermingling gene flow, and human genetic and biological variations occur in a continuous fashion. Clinical variations can be defined as a change and gradual across groups and trait shades and blend into each other. Traits also tend to vary independently of each other. And it's kind of interesting that if you think about it, if you go and try walking from South Africa all the way up to Russia, you're never going to see a clear-cut area in which a skin color just drastically changes. What you see is this flow of difference that happens, and it's very gradual change that occurs because melanin. So, is the scientific concept of race relevant to humans? No, most definitely not. There is neither genetic nor morphological evidence to divide humans into subspecies. Genetic differences needed to classify a group, such as a subspecies, does not exist in humans. There's no single genetic marker that can be used to sort people into races. Morphological evidence must rely on forensic analysis. This is identification and description of dead people. Our race is Homo sapien sapien. The final sapien is our race. So, forensic analysis. Forensic experts use cranial measurements to sort people into populations. We can classify a skull's race about 80% of the time. Cranium measurements are based on averages and range, so specific cranium use diverge from the correct range. Forensic expert success rate does not mean these categories are biologically based. Factors such as health, nutrition, and evolutionary factors create cranial variations between individuals. And then you have people like myself who are mixed race, and we have features that are both of our different races, which is interesting to think about. So these are just a very quick reference to the difference in craniums, supposedly. But you can notice that Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and Negroid are the three variations that are thought to have happened. The adaptations are due to heat, cold, latitude, as well as altitude. The Caucasoid has a more prominent chin. as well as a high bridge nasal bone. Mongoloid has a lower nose bridge and broad, flatter, outward sloping jaw. When you look at the Negroid, it's a broader nose bridge with a wider nasal opening and subnasal groove and outward sloping jaw. The evidence really doesn't match up. So evidence indicates that race is a powerful cultural and scientific construction. Anthropological skepticism about the utility of race for understanding human variations runs deep in the discipline's history. It's built around a set of assumptions that anthropology shows are flawed when applied to humans. Race is very real. Just saying. It most definitely is. Biocultural concepts of discrimination stress on human bodies. The idea of race is a myth or culturally constructed might have the impression that race is not real. Race becomes a potent force and an objectable reality when manifest through racism. Racial groups are accompanied with and supported by marginalization, exploitation, stigma for some, and privilege for others. I have a couple of YouTube videos that I really want you guys to watch that talks about the stress on the humans' bodies because of this division of race. But this is the end of part 2 of chapter 7. Cheers.